Hey everyone, how you doing? Welcome to Beyond the Lane. We are going to be talking all things Tottenham Hotspur. What we're going to be talking about today is the usual transfer rumours and updates in current activity, either in or out of the club. We're also going to be talking about the friendly on Saturday away to Reading, and we're also going to have a little bit of club news at the end. So first up is those continued transfer rumours with Morgan Gibbs-White top of the agenda. 60 million release clause. Spurs have met that release clause. Nottingham Forest owner Marinakis has reacted like a spoiled child and is throwing his toys out of the pram, saying that Spurs have tapped up the player and is threatening legal action against the club. Now, he has supposedly instructed the club's lawyers to write to the agent of the player, as well as Tottenham Hotspur, putting them on legal notice, whatever that means. But there does not seem to have been any formal complaint made to the Premier League or any kind of legal action in terms of taking anything out against Tottenham Hotspur or the agent themselves. Gibbs-White was filmed and photographed by their club, putting up information about him turning up for training in sessions, having a laugh with Jota Silva, as well as a number of other players during that session. Gibbs-White seems to be acting quite professional about it. There's no point burning your bridges until you've finally crossed over onto them. So to keep the players, the club, and the fans on side, it's probably a good thing, and actually a good thing for the player from our perspective if we were to go ahead and sign him. There are some rumours kicking about that we might actually pay a little bit more money just to get this one over the line, just to placate the club in Marinakis. However, I don't think we should be doing that. If there's a release clause, if it is 60 million, and it is a clause that states that if you meet that valuation that you get the player, or you have the opportunity to speak to the player about them coming to your club, then why would you pay anything else? It does just seem like it is just a tactic for the club to slow down the transfer in the hope of putting it off. At the end of the day, Forest are now going to be in the Europa League, and they will be wanting to keep their best players, of which he is one. However, looking at that from that perspective as well, if Gibbs-White was considered one of their best players and they value him at £100 million, then surely the player should have been on a contract that reflected that and taken this release clause out of that contract and potentially put in a higher value or removed it altogether, then putting the power into the club to be able to say no to people like Spurs or other. Another one that seems to be making that kind of edge on this is the fact that Man City had apparently been in conversation with Forest for an £80 million deal, including the transfer of 22-year-old McAtee to Forest as part of that. And with Spurs making that step in, Gibbs-White wanted to go to Tottenham simply because I think there is a far better chance of playing time at Spurs than what he would have had at the City ground with Manchester City. One problem I do see with this transfer at the moment, the longer it goes on, is now that the £60 million release clause is now in the public domain, other interested parties may decide to approach and come in for the player. Given the current spat going on between Nottingham Forest's owner Marinakis and Daniel Levy and Spurs, the likelihood is if someone else comes in, he will give them pretty much permission to go ahead with that, probably just despite Spurs, considering he feels slighted by the whole process. Now, he had been into Liverpool. However, when you look at Liverpool's spending and signings this summer, while he would be a great addition to the squad, he isn't going to be a first-time player, meaning that he would face exactly the same issue that he had should he have went ahead with the move to Man City of limited playing time and availability within that first 11 and the squad itself. So Spurs still looking like the best option for him, unless somebody from further afield and abroad comes in, but I think he probably would want to stay within the Premier League setup. And certainly, if rumours are to believe in what Thomas Tuchel has said to the playing squad, is you need to be playing Champions League football if you wish to be considered to play for England while he is the manager. So we just have to wait and see what comes from that. I certainly think that the deal will go ahead at some point. As I say, it's all about massaging Marinakis' ego and certainly making him feel a bit better about the whole thing. He's looking for more money, but if the release clause is there, why should anybody give that over? And certainly, why should we? If he wants to come to us, if we've met that release clause, then technically there shouldn't be any issues or delays in this. But we just have to wait and see. The club are already looking at alternatives to this one if it doesn't go ahead, and we are being rumoured to have approached or potentially already be in the mix for Harvey Elliott from Liverpool. The 22-year-old played 28 games last season 5 goals, 3 assists, but only 6 starts from all competitions. Doesn't exactly tick the boxes in terms of Premier League proven ready players, certainly for those to slot into that Champions League and to enhance the first 11, but also to make the squad a lot better as well. A fee of around 40 million is being spoken about to sign the player. I cannot see Spurs wanting to pay 40 million for a player who has not proven themselves, and certainly not saying that he's a bad player, but certainly not what we're looking for right now. And he certainly wouldn't jump into that first 11 and really push players around him for that. Certainly, when you're comparing for an extra 20 million, you would be getting a player like Gibbs-White or similar, certainly in that value bracket as well. Would he be a good squad addition? Absolutely, but I wouldn't be wanting to pay any more than 25, 30 million for him if that was the case. But he doesn't tick the mold for what we're looking for. So hopefully it is just a rumour. Newcastle United and Brighton are also supposedly interested in the player. As I say, for 40 million, it's probably a far better option to go to Brighton than potentially Newcastle or Spurs. Speaking of Newcastle, Newcastle are now supposedly in the mix for Wissa. Wissa is a player, as we know, is being linked quite heavily with Spurs and being reunited with Thomas Frank, as well as some of that backroom staff. A phenomenal player, age-wise, and the money being looked at, 50 million, still quite a lot of money for somebody of that age, and you'll not see an awful lot of return from it. However, with Newcastle entering the mix, especially as it looked like Frankfurt's Ekitike is going to be going to Liverpool potentially, then Newcastle are looking for that alternative option, especially if Isaac ends up moving as well. So it'll be a bit of a battle, but Wissa has come out to say that his preferred option would be Spurs, as he wants to be reunited with his former manager as well as assistant coaches. So that is in our favour. The one problem surrounding that transfer, of course, is Manchester United and the Mbeumo situation. He wants to go to Man United. He supposedly turned Spurs down. However, I can't see Brentford allowing both of those transfers to go ahead. So whichever one goes forward first is probably likely to be the last big name leaving Brentford, certainly until they can secure replacements for all of the players who have already left. And Mbeumo is valued at around £70 million by Brentford. Manchester United are looking to make a third bid, but by the sounds of it, only in the region of £65 million. Whether or not Brentford will cave to that, only time will tell, but certainly if we can get that deal across the line first, then he will be going nowhere, which can only be good for us as a club and certainly those around us, because it means that Brentford stay the same, although a little weakened by previous transfers out, and Manchester United don't get a really good player that we were previously linked with as well. Richarlson supposedly is looking to be on the move, or at least rumoured to be. Two Brazilian clubs, Fluminense and Palmeiras, are both looking at him, valued at in around £55 million on that transfer. Those clubs are flush with cash after the Club World Cup, so it makes the move a bit more likely. Richarlson is a player on his day, is phenomenal. He is absolutely dogged when it comes to chasing the ball down, making plays, running himself into the ground for the club. We've seen it in the cup final. The unfortunate thing with him, although I think he is well liked by the fans, is the fact that he does not produce it week in, week out, or at least over sustained periods where you can forgive a player for maybe one or two games. We are not really turning it on. So certainly a move out with the club, I think, would be good for us and for him. 55 does seem an awful lot for Brazilian clubs. However, I think if we can get around 40 million for him, I think it would be a job well done, and certainly money that could be reinvested in Wissa or other players. Speaking of other players, and previously mentioned in Manchester United, we have been linked from yesterday and into today with Garnacho. The Argentinian winger/forward is supposedly being linked with a number of clubs, one of which is Spurs. Very exciting talent and prospect, a player that can change a game in an instant, can score some absolutely cracking goals. The problem again with him is consistency. If the team's head goes down, his head goes down, and that's really the type of games where you need players with that kind of skill set and ability to turn it on its head and maybe get you back into a game. Phenomenal player, very young, quite moody. Is it a good fit for Spurs in terms of the attacking ethos of the club and the history behind it? Flair attacking player, scores wonder goals, absolutely is. Could Thomas Frank get the best out of him? Quite possibly. Man United are looking somewhere in the region of 40 to 60 million for the player. it would be a good deal if we could get it done. However, Chelsea are interested in him, and they are potentially talking about a swap deal with Jackson and potentially some cash going Manchester United's way, which is probably more favourable to Manchester United in terms of a trade. However, with Garnacho, when you look at all the players that Chelsea have already signed this season, what they brought in last season, if he's moving for game time, it's probably not the best place for him. But I think it's one of those transfers that we're being linked with everyone at the minute. Is it likely to go ahead? Probably not. But it's another one we just have to wait and see. Our biggest problems in the team is the defensive midfield option, that number 6 role. Bissouma, on his day, fantastic. Again, not very consistent since his move to Spurs. And in his final year of his contract, is likely to move on to Turkish clubs Fenerbahce and Galatasaray, both linked to the player for a value of around 15 to 20 million. We are supposedly in talks with Fenerbahce. However, we are being linked with Joao Palinha at Bayern. 30 years of age, fantastic midfielder, Premier League proven at Fulham. He's got experience in Europe now with Bayern. £47 million they bought him for last season. They're looking probably around 26 to 30 million, which probably isn't a bad deal for us, especially when you look at the value of the market and certain players at the moment. So it certainly ticks the boxes for us. He is supposedly keen on a move, so it's just a case of waiting and seeing if that one actually moves and goes on. Played 24 games last season in all competitions for Bayern, so he's certainly looking to improve the amount of games that he's playing, certainly when you're looking at that kind of age group as well. So certainly a position we should be looking quite hard at. Supposedly also in talks with Palace about Wharton. 80 to 100 million, 21 years of age. I think the valuation is too high. 60 plus add-ons is probably a far better deal for both parties and more likely to happen. However, I don't think that Palace are in any position to really want to sell him on, especially when he's got some like 4 or 5 years left on his current contract. On to match day information. Spurs have a friendly this coming Saturday, the 19th of July, away to Reading. Thomas Frank's first game in charge. It'll be quite interesting to see how he lines up and what players make that starting 11 for that match and what kind of tactical flexibility we'll see throughout that game. I reckon we'll probably start off with a 4-4-2 or 4-4-1-1 just to show a bit more strength in the formation, but also actually throw in some new tactics that we probably haven't seen in a number of seasons, given the way that we have played and the lack of tactical flexibility we've seen over the last 2 seasons, apart from the last 3 Europa League games that we played. Now, with that formation in mind, I'll take a quick run through what I think we might see as a starting 11. I think he'll go in quite strong just to give people an idea and to give himself an idea of what that starting 11 might look like based on the players we currently have available for the opening games of the season and potentially the match against PSG as well. So starting goal, Vicario. I think at some point in the season we might see Kinski really taking over that first team spot. Vicario is a very solid player, but he does have a habit of going missing in games, which lead to goals or the potential for goals to be scored. Kinski certainly looks a bit more of a solid player, and I think with the new backroom staff being added will give us a lot more flexibility in terms of what our goalkeeping stance will look like. But I think Vicario at the moment is the one to be displaced, so he would be our starter on Saturday. Back four, we're looking very similar to what we have seen when the team's been at its strongest. Porro at right back, Doge at left back with a centre back pairing of Romero and Van de Ven. Number of options across the back line, which we may very well see come into the mix at various points throughout the game. And we'll talk about that after we've done the first 11 as well. Across the middle of the park, I think you're looking at the wings. Left wing's probably going to be Sonny or Richarlson. And on the right wing, we're going to be looking at Brennan Johnson, I think. Centre middle of the park, we're probably going to be looking at Bentancur and Bergval, with a forward line of Solanke leading the charge with Kudus right behind him. Number of options you can move around in that starting 11, but I think that's probably what we're going to look at. In terms of what can we bring on to change the actual formation as well as the player mould, we'll probably see Kinski and Austin getting some game time throughout possibly the second half, maybe towards the end of the first half. For the kind of back line, you've got a number of options for the right back and left back or wing back roles, depending on which way the formations are going. So you're probably looking at the like of Davies coming in there, as well as Spence. For the centre-back positions, we've got Danzo, Takai and Vuskovic. So it'll be quite interesting to see how Vuskovic fits into that, especially considering the game time he got in Belgium last year as well. So a whole host of young players as well, which would be quite good to see if they get any kind of game time in that friendly too. Takai also, if we look to switch out potentially in a game to three centre-backs, which Thomas Frank has done in the past, he can play on the left-hand side of a centre-back setting of three, the same as Ben Davies. So it'll be quite interesting to see what kind of tactical flexibility at the back we can see there. Certainly Spence and Danzo did themselves real justice last season in the games that they did play for us. So it'll be quite interesting to see how Takai comes into that as well. Across the middle of the park, again, left wing, Sonny, Richarlson, probably swapping in and out between that. Remember that kind of midfield slots right across the board. You've got Yang, Solomon, and Sar and Bissouma. So we'll probably see some switching out throughout the middle of the park, as well as those wing positions. We've got a lot of young players like Alfie Devine and Jamie Donnelly from midfield slots as well. So it'd be quite good to see some of them getting game time as well on Saturday, just to make sure that they're still being thought of and potentially, puts them in the short window for some loans for either the first 6 months or the full 12 months of next season too. Centre forward slots, say Solanke and Kudas probably the ones to start up front. However, again, there's a number of options at the club for that too. So we could potentially have Richarlson slipping in on the front if he isn't starting out on the wings or getting swapped out there. We could also see some of the younger players like Lancashire, etc., come, and Dane Scarlett being brought in and swapped in and out to give Frank an option to see what those guys are looking like as well in terms of their displays. And potentially you'll see one of them going out on loan, or maybe both of them for next season. So we just have to wait and see. I think this might be the kind of break for Dane Scarlett. If he doesn't do something this season, then I think we'll probably end up having to sell him next. Players that aren't going to make the grade, well, we've got Madison and Kulusevski still out injured, so they're not going to be seeing any game time soon, as well as Gray, Odegaard, Tell and Moore have all just come back from international duty, so we'll not see them till the end of the month being able to be given some game time, as they've all been given time to rest after their competitive competitions at the start of the summer period. So interesting times, I think, for the friendlies this weekend. It would have been good to have seen Gibbs-White come in and play, but that one isn't over the line yet. Hopefully before the next set of friendlies after this, we'll at least have one, maybe two new faces in to give that squad a bit of a boost and a bit more competitiveness. But I think there's a decent squad there to give us a good game on Saturday and to give us, the fans, an opportunity to see some of these new players, as well as what Thomas Frank's vision is going to be for the upcoming season. So the last thing on this list will then be a little bit of club news. The Bill Nicolson gates have started to be reinstalled at the grounds. That work started yesterday, so it will be finished and completed before the start of the new season. And I can imagine that the fans will be rallying around once that's engaged to allow themselves to get those nice photographs done in, made famous, and the name given from the photograph taken in the 1970s of Bill Nick popping through those gates and posing. So a nice wee bit there to see, and it'll look fantastic once it is back and installed in at the ground. Last wee bit of club news, the blackmail case for Sonny has started. The male defendant has pleaded guilty to blackmailing Sonny, and his female co-defendant has said that she is not guilty. So that will continue. Hopefully that will be brought to a close, giving Sonny some final closure and hopefully helping him to be a lot more freer and rested for the upcoming season, and we'll see a far better Sonny than what we did last season. That is the video, guys. Drop a like on it, comments down below, subscribe to the channel. Let me know what your thoughts are on everything we've spoken about today. Let me know what your thoughts are for the upcoming match at the weekend. What kind of formations, what kind of players you're looking to see starting, coming in and out, as well as any transfer rumours that you think you've heard and you might want to be discussed at another video. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.